So the work began when I was looking at the National Folklore Collection, more specifically the Schools Collection. It's a collection housed in UCD of like thousands of stories collected by kids in the 1930s. And it's just, there's so many instances of like weird bodily metamorphosis that really spoke to my own practice at the time, that was kind of focused on imagined, kind of like absurd imagined relationships between people, between objects, between things. And then these two just started to cross over, and that's how I started to make the work for this exhibition. So this process kind of came out of the idea of like, when I was like looking at these stories, like thinking about kind of collective storytelling, this tradition of like oral folktale, and of like how stories are like passed on and how they change over time. And even in this archive, like there's like dozens of stories of the same version, or different versions of the same story. So then I started to think how I could kind of change or like adapt or insert my practice into these stories, I guess. And then from that, the process for this exhibition was kind of brought about or like solidified, of like looking at going through these stories and looking for instances of metamorphosis where like this like binary between human and nature wasn't so like fixed but kind of like porous and blurred. So I like came across these stories with the metamorphosis and would make drawings or illustrations kind of straight from the stories, and then the drawings they're all ink drawings that you can kind of see in the exhibition, and then these drawings would talk to each other. Certain elements would like extend, they'd like play around with each other. Like one story could be like imagined in like 50 years in the future, one story could be like magnified 10 times, like and that way they kind of mixed together and merged. And I'd maybe take like 4 or 5 stories and build like a narrative, like a new visual narrative, and then that's what the tufted works are based on. So in this exhibition, there's dozens of stories referenced, but maybe one that kind of is like the earliest work I did, which is over here. It's called Bowtide. It references lots of folklore surrounding like cows, witchcraft, hares, and like milk thievery. So it was supposed that like fairies or witches could turn into hares, and they were sucking people's milk dry. They were sucking cows dry of milk. And some of the folklore surrounding this was like, if you tied a ribbon on a cow's tail, then the cow would be protected. Or like another story was like the cow or the hares were hiding the milk on the moon via moon ladder, which is a really nice phrase written down. And another story was that like they found this hare, they were chasing after it, they shot at this hare just before it like jumped into a tiny window, and they opened the door of the cottage, and there was this woman who was stirring like a giant vat of milk and like pumping blood where she had been shot as a hare.